Alright, in this video, I want to talk about calculating the rapture, getting down to the year, the season, the month, the week, the day, the hour, and talk about this a bit, and talk about how we may need to recalculate things. I'm making this video to encourage people to keep on keeping on, because that's what I'm going to do. As you can see here, it is 9/29/2022, and it's about 10 o'clock in the morning. This is about 6 o'clock in the evening Israel time. They're about 8 hours ahead. Their sun goes down at about 6:30 in the evening. And I'm bringing that all up because of the time of the year it is. It's Rosh Hashanah. It's the Feast of Trumpets. This is where everybody's looking for the rapture. It's where I'm looking for the rapture. Now, is this the year? Well, we'll find out in the next half hour, an hour, because the last trump of the Feast of Trumpets should be before sunset today in Israel. And that is about a half hour, hour away. Maybe it's 15 minutes away. I'm not sure exactly when it's going down and exactly when they're going to do the last trump. So I'm just saying within the hour. So there's still hope that we're going home. I'm going home right now. But I'm going to talk about some things in case it doesn't happen, to encourage people to keep on keeping on. We'll keep looking at this every year. And it's actually more likely that it is another year than this year, and I'm going to explain. Now, you might be like me, where you're relying on all these other rapture teachers, because my main focus is to get into the Bible and just make it one with me. Just try to memorize the entire thing and to study it and to know the doctrine, to understand it so simply that I can explain it to a simpleton or a 5-year-old or somebody with some other mental disability or handicap, that I can break things down simply for anybody to understand. And that's my goal. That's what I'm driven to do. But listening to these rapture teachers gets me excited, and learning about what they're saying gets me excited. But I keep note of the little things they're saying and the little things they bring up, and I see holes in it. Not that it's a bad thing, not that it's intentional. I'm not condemning these people. I'm just bringing some points up that need to be brought up so that you don't get discouraged here. It's what I do with doctrine. When people bring a doctrine and it's different from my point of view, if it's something new, I look for holes in it, because I look at teachings as a boat, as a ship that you're going to take out to sea. And you're going to go out there for months with this thing. You want to make sure that there's not even a leak in it, because a leak may not be a big deal, but over time, over a month, that becomes a problem, right? So I like to look for those things in people's doctrines and their arguments. And I like to do it to myself, because if I have a hole or a leak in what I'm teaching, I don't want to use it. So with that being said, I'm sure you're familiar with what these rapture teachers are getting into with these Shemitah cycles and the Jubilees. And they're talking about how this is a Shemitah cycle, we're right at a Jubilee. This could be it. Now, even if it's it, that doesn't mean right at the beginning of the Jubilee this could happen. It could happen at the end of the actual Jubilee. So just in case, if you're not familiar with what a Shemitah and a Jubilee is, a Shemitah is this right here. A 7-year period is a Shemitah cycle. And then when you get 7 of these, so let's just times this by 7 to speed this up, you get 49. Like whoop-de-doo, right? Well, that very next year, so let's just add 1, is the 50th. That year is a Jubilee. It's the year where debt is released and people are set free. It's a sabbatical year of rest. But you don't count by 50s. You count by 7s until you get to 49. The next year, this 50th year right here, that's the first year of the next Shemitah cycle for the next 7 years, and it's the first year of the next Jubilee cycle. So what we would do here is add 6, right? This 6 and the 1, that's 7 years. This is the next Shemitah, and then we would just keep on keeping on with the 7s. I'll just do this for one set of 49, just to show you that we would just keep doing this right here. And whoops, I think I just jacked it up. I think I hit 70. No, that 77 is the number that I'm at right now. Okay, I thought I accidentally added it. And then right here, nope, one more I think. This, boom, right here at 98, we've just gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Shemitah cycles. So then we would do just add plus 1. The 99th year is a Jubilee, and then we start this all over again. You don't count by 50s, you go by 7s. The 50th year, that is the Jubilee year, but you don't count that as like a separate year. It's part of the start of the next Shemitah cycle. It's part of the next Jubilee cycle. Okay? So, with that being said, these rapture teachers are telling us that the rapture would happen on a Shemitah cycle ending and beginning at a Jubilee year. But then again, it could happen at the end of a Jubilee, not at the beginning, right? But that doesn't fit, and I'll explain why. We have, let me just clear that. We are told that a day with the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. We're going to have 6,000 years of human history, and then we're going to have a 1,000-year millennial reign. That's what we're told about in Revelation, 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ on earth, where it's peace and prosperity on the earth for 1,000 years. And that's because that's the Sabbath year, or the Sabbath day, when you look at the history of mankind. So what we would have is 1,000 years. This would be the first day, or what we call Sunday, right? And we would just do this again, and we get over to Monday. And now we're started Tuesday, and then here we are Wednesday, and then here we are Thursday, and then 6,000 years, here we are Friday, boom, the next one, Sabbath reign. So at 6,000 years, this is the end. Jesus is setting up the 1,000 years of peace. So when we get to 6,000 years, that's when we should expect Jesus' return. This should be the end of the tribulation, the end of the wrath of God. Jesus returns to establish the millennial reign in Jerusalem, in Israel. Right? So, if that's the case, if we divide this by 7, look at that. That doesn't fit. So, the 6,000th year is not divisible by 7. If it's not divisible by 7, then it's not divisible by 49. And just in case you're wondering, I'll just do it just to do it. So we see here, boom, doesn't fit, right? So this at the end of the tribulation, it's not a jubilee. It's not a Shemitah cycle. It doesn't make sense. You can even take away 7 years and it doesn't fit. So if we go to 6,993, I messed that up. 5,993, and then we divide that by 7. What do we get? Another number not divided by 7. And obviously, if we do it by 49, that's not going to fit either. So there's no reason to think that the rapture, if it happens before the 7 years, at the end of the 7 years, that it's going to fit. Let's check out another thing where people say that the uh, tribulation wrath period is actually 14 years. So that would be 5,986. So we'll take that, we'll divide that by 7. Doesn't fit. And by now you should realize that if it's not divided by 7, then it's not divided by 49. Right? If it was divided by 7, then you should be able to get the 49s. I'm just going to do it just to appease any kind of objection. 86, and we'll divide it by 49. It's actually the opposite. If it's able to be divided by 49, then it's able to be divided by 7. So I guess I'll do both just to appease. So we see that doesn't fit either. So what we get the closest number of jubilees is actually 122. So if we times 122 times 49, we get 5,978, which is 22 years before the 6,000th year. But the 6,000th year would not be a jubilee or a shemitah. But then again, that's if we're counting the jubilees and the shemitah cycles from the very beginning, which I don't know why we wouldn't. Do we actually start them when they are established, given to Israel? Maybe that would be a better way to count, and I'm not sure exactly where that is. But I've actually heard some other objections which we can also use here. A lot of people say that it was 4,004 years before Jesus showed up that the fall was, and then it's 2,000 years after that. So it's actually 6,004. So if we divide that by 49, it doesn't fit. So we do that again with 7s, just to show that it's also not on a shemitah. Doesn't fit. Then there's also saying that Jesus was either born in 4,004 years after the fall of Adam. But you also got to take in that Adam was probably 33 years old because Jesus is the second Adam, and that's how long he lived. So let's do that. We'll do the 6,000. We'll add the 4, and then we'll add the 33, and then we will divide by 49, and we actually get a bit over. Right? So let's try that with a 7 just to show that it's not also a shemitah, whatever. 37 divided by 7 equals, doesn't fit. But if we do 123 times 49, we get 6,027. Now, I'm not sure what to make of that, right? If you want to say that we're going over the actual time by 27 years, and we're actually 2022, so not sure what to really make of that, to be honest. If there's anything to that, right? If that's like assuming our dates are correct. Like when Jesus showed up, it's exactly 2,000 years after. I mean, that would mean if it's been over 6,000 years is what I'm saying. If the year 2000 was 6,000 years, then 2027 would be the next actual Jubilee. That's if the year 2000 is exactly 6,000 years after the fall of Adam. this would be the next fit. And like we went over, if we do 122 times 49, it's actually 5,978, 22 years before 6,000. You could actually say 21 years, because the very next year is the actual Jubilee year. So let's just put the 1 there. It's 5,979. That is the actual Jubilee year. That would be 21 years before the 6,000th year. But it's kind of tough to tell where we actually are. So if the year 2000 was the 6,000 mark, then this is past, and we have to wait until 2027. And if the year 2000 was the 6,000 year mark, then, or wasn't, then it's kind of like, well, where the heck are we? Kind of like where we got here to 6,027, because we did 123 actual jubilees. That means if we add 1, that is the Jubilee year. That's actually, if the year 2000 is the 6,000th year, then 2028 is the Jubilee year. But then again, these people have been studying it a long time. Maybe they are doing it right because they are calculating the actual Shemitas and Jubilees from when God said to do it. But even if you do that, it's kind of a guessing game because of how the calendars and stuff changed. How are you going to know where you're at? And I know the Jews have this weird time frame that they got. But keeping this in mind, I wanted to bring up something else here. This is a screenshot I took when I was watching. Okay, I'm trying to zoom in. I hope this is big enough for you. This was from End Times Dreams and Vision. Bob Barker, I believe his name is, or Bob Barber. I get it mixed up with the television guy who did The Price is Right. So sorry if I did that. But I call him the Shemitah guy or the Feed My Sheep guy, because I support his, what is it, I guess missionary work, his charity. Man, brain farting on what it's called. But anyway, he gets this, wow, my brain can't think of a word. He gets this site where he actually supports missionaries going out and giving out the Bibles and clothing and food, water and stuff to people around the world. It's stuff that he promotes in his videos if you watched his videos. But anyway, he had this to show. I thought this was interesting because he was going, hey, let's look at the blood moons back before World War II happened. And it went with 7 years here. He's like, look you got a blood moon, and then a few years later, you got 3 blood moons in a row, and then a few years later, you get these 2 blood moons, and then boom, tribulation. Right? So, you see the problem that I'm seeing here. Well, this right here is what we see here. We have a blood moon here, right? And then a few years later, we have the 3, like we see here. And then a few years later, we have the 2. But then this, like, you can't see because I had the stuff up. Probably should have thought of that beforehand. But it says here 2029. This would actually be the start of the tribulation if the tribulation started after the actual blood moons. So you see how his setup wasn't consistent here. oh, the tribulation started after this, because the tribulation has to do with Israel, so we should pay attention to the blood moons. The eclipses are different from here to here, but the eclipses have to do with actually the church, right? So what we need to focus on, well, this is more not necessarily to the church, but to the Gentiles. The blood moons are to the actual Jews here. So we should pay attention to that. And what we see here is the tribulation happens right at the end of this 132, and 132, boom, that's where we have the tribulation. So what we might need to be looking at is 2029. It doesn't seem to fit with the fig tree generation unless it's to the 80 years and you don't turn 81 until you actually reach your birthday when you're 81. So when you're 80 for a whole year, right? I think that's a point some of these rapture people are saying. So in 2029, it could be actually in the fall of 2028 that we actually have the rapture. And then tribulation is going to start. If it's going to match with this timeline that he's showing. When I saw this and I was comparing it, and he's like, boom, look at this. This is where it's starting. And I was like, but you're not matching it up. What are you doing here? It's more like, I hope this is what's going to happen. It's like, well, if we're looking at the actual evidence here, what we're seeing is not yet. I know you don't want to hear it, but if we're going to go by this information and by what I was looking at with the math, if we're going to have this done as the warnings here, then it's going to be 28, 29, rapture, start of the tribulation. If this is correct. And it seems to fit because World War II is a good example of the Jews going through tribulation and the wrath of God, right? Makes sense. And not only that, if we go back to the actual calculations, if the year 2000 is the actual 6,000 year mark, the next actual Jubilee is the year 2028. But that's if the year 2000 is actually the 6,000th year. It's going through all the mess of looking at dates going all the way back to when Jesus was around, and the flip over from BC to AD, and to get all the dates right. It's like, to me, it's like you got to have a revelation from God to be able to put that together. But maybe I'm just a dumbass. I don't know. And then you got thinking about, well, are we calculating years by prophetically, where there's 360-day years and 30-day months? Or how are we calculating this? Maybe if we use the sun, moon, and the stars, and we're able to go back and we use that to calculate the months and the years, we can tell where we're at. Because where we got Stellarium and these other apps and whatnot, we can actually use that stuff. We can use that stuff, and then we should use that. So if anybody's good with Stellarium and that, I would like to know if you would be able to actually use that to calculate biblical years, where we would be at. I'm even not sure where you would start, to be honest. I mean, you assume that you're at 6,000 years and then go back using biblical years tracing back from right now. I mean, you'd have to take some time doing that, and yeah, but I think that's what you need to do. If you're trying to use the Gregorian calendar, Julian calendar, even a Jewish calendar, going through all the calendars going back, you're going to get confused and messed up. But if you just knew the stars, the sun, moon, and the stars, and you could use these programs to go back and see how the stars were back then, and you just went all the way back, I think you would have a good idea of where you're at. Matter of fact, if you could go all the way back where Jesus was actually born, the Star of Bethlehem, that might be a good starting point. Because then you could go, how many years from that are we? And then you could actually go backwards and see if 4,004 years before that, what it was like in the sun, moon, and stars, and see if it was actually how things work. And then I think if we did something like that, we could see where we are. But if this stuff is right, what I'm saying, then it's 6 more years. But I'm not saying this is what is it. Right? Because I don't know if the year 2000 is actually 6,000 years from the fall of Adam. I don't know where we actually are. I'm just going with the information I got, and this is where it leads me. Right? So I'm taking this information that I calculated here and taking this. This is what I come up with. And it's not super convincing. It's not super reliable. It's not really hope inspiring. But at the same time, it's like there's something to it. So I'm putting this out here so other people who know how to use these star programs get with me. I want to know. I want to know this stuff. I'm curious. And with that being said, thanks for watching and take care.